Thanks so much for joining me today for a celebration of organizational community care impacting lives in the Philadelphia region here on WPPM 106.5 FM. I'm Tara Lake, and I so appreciate your taking the time to join me for today's special presentation, highlighting the work of organizations that overcome extraordinary odds to deliver inspiring, innovative, compassionate, and timely community care for our neighbors in Philadelphia and throughout the Delaware Valley. Today, we're so fortunate to profile the work of 4 organizations who have a track record of modeling that radical commitment to community in a powerful way. And they've been doing so for decades or longer. In fact, 2 of today's profiled organizations have been serving our region since the 1800s. So, what exactly does it take to amass that kind of community care street cred? We caught up with our friends at Overbrook School for the Blind, Manna, the Choir School of Delaware, and Covenant House, Pennsylvania, to find out more. Overbrook School for the Blind has made a life-changing impact in the experiences of blind and visually impaired students for many years. And it turns out the influence of the school has been felt not just here in Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania, but around the world.
My favorite part of Overbrook is
the music.
work.
I like playing on the white box.
Pledge. I like the swings.
I like dancing on the stage. Lunch. I like going swim.
Coming to Overbrook School for the Blind has opened up a lot of opportunities for me. When I first came here, I didn't know what to expect, especially coming from a public school. Surprisingly, when I came here, I gained a lot of working experience and I learned the importance of being independent.
I caught up with Todd Reeves, Executive Director and CEO of Overbrook School for the Blind, and he shed light on the work of the school, stretching all the way back to the 19th century. We asked Mr. Reeves about the mission and history of Overbrook School for the Blind, and here's what he had to say.
Sure, and it's a pleasure to be here and talk with you about all that Overbrook has done over the years. OSB, the Overbrook School for the Blind, was chartered by the Commonwealth in 1832, actually before the establishment of the public school systems within Pennsylvania. And it set up shop originally in Center City, but then moved to its present location in the Overbrook Farms neighborhood of Philadelphia near the turn of the 20th century. So as the 3rd oldest school for the blind in the United States, in its early history, Overbrook often served as a training ground for schools for the blind in other states that were established later. But still today, we serve 180 students enrolled in the school, but we also provide outreach services to young children and their families in the region. So our efforts to reach beyond the walls that encompass our campus in Philadelphia still holds true today, as it did in 1832. Well, in terms of mission, I think my role is to develop services for children with visual impairment so they're equipped to really be their best selves, to realize their potential. That's closely aligned with essentially, the word-for-word mission of the school. And in terms of leadership, I see my role as kind of overseeing the operation of a very diverse and multifaceted organization that again, not only operates a school for 180 students, but also sends itinerant teachers of the visually impaired to students in charter schools and local school districts, as well as in houses of very young children with visual impairment.
We wanted to hear about points of pride and little-known facts about the work of Overbrook School for the Blind. And Mr. Reeves told us about the reach of the school's work and the ways Overbrook School for the Blind is giving back.
So our early intervention program really accepts the infants. They go out into the homes of families who have an infant that might have been just recently diagnosed with blindness or visual impairment. And so we provide early intervention in the home with under the recognition that the parent is always the first and primary educator for a child. So we support the parent in being in that role. by providing all of the information that a parent needs to be able to work and assist their infant and their toddler in being able to develop skills that would be important for a young child with blindness or visual impairment to be able to attain. And then also, obviously, we operate from on-site preschool at age 3, and then it goes through high school, school-to-work programs. And so in our school-to-work programs, we have students that are 21 years old, and then they would age out at that point in time. But we also operate an overnight independent living program, so students in the Philadelphia region and elsewhere can learn apartment-style living. And beyond that, we have an international footprint because we have a program in which we're actively engaged in delivering and supporting assistive and accessible technology for children with visual impairment in 9 developing countries in Southeast Asia. So we're clearly more than a school, and our impact and leadership, extends well beyond Philadelphia. I think there are several points of pride, but one that seems most timely right now is that our intention early on within the pandemic to be a resource for our broader community by making sure that the city health officials knew that we're available to host vaccination sites on our campus for community members. We hosted a number during the summer, and I think it really reflects our interest in serving the community and also underscoring our belief that to build a better society, at some point we look beyond who lives independently and who doesn't, but recognize that we all live our best life if we live interdependently. People can rely on OSB, the Overbrook School for the Blind, to be, a contributing member of our broader community. We want people to depend on us as servant leaders. But anyone affiliated with the Overbrook School for the Blind is going to wonder why I didn't say this or that is a surprise or inspiration to others. There are many somethings that would serve as a surprise or inspiration. But I guess one of the recent facts that inspires me and surprised me is that our Farm to Table program, Harvest this summer, weighed down the shelves of local food banks with over 1,000 pounds of fresh produce. And, I'm particularly impressed by our students and our staff in being able to generate that kind of outcome, because I think it truly reinforces our belief that our school gives to this world as much as we might take from it. I came on board in 2017, and the Farm to Table program was well established before I arrived, so I take very little credit for the hard work that our staff and students have put forward in the Farm to Table program. But on our 26-acre campus, we have several fruit trees. So we have an orchard that we have growing on our campus: apples, apricots, plums, cherries. There's a very diverse orchard bearing fruit trees. And so we partner with other nonprofits within Philadelphia that want to promote, the interests of farm to table initiatives to see more fresh produce, more availability of fresh produce within the Philadelphia region. And so we have a number of different gardens. We're very fortunate that we have a wonderful horticulture program and a facility that really is state of the art. And so through these efforts, our staff and our students recognize that in a city like Philadelphia, fresh produce is really valuable, so much more valuable than it might be appreciated in other regions. So we feel like if we can't consume the fruits and vegetables ourselves, we want to put it on from our farm to the table, surrounded by people in need. And so that's something that I think the entire community can be proud of, that there are organizations that have that interest in Philadelphia.
The pandemic has created unprecedented circumstances for so many around the world and presented unique challenges for organizations committed to community service and community care. How did Overbrook School for the Blind respond? Here again is Todd Reeves.
And as you're well aware, the pandemic has presented unprecedented challenges to schools throughout our nation over the course of the past year, and our school is no different. I think one of the really cornerstones of the school that allowed us to see this through was that adapting and overcoming challenges has been a core mission of the school from the very beginning, from its outset. We've always served students with the expectation that we want to equip them with the ability to adapt and overcome challenges that they'll be confronted with throughout their life. So that kind of genetic transmission from year to year, I think, aided us in the grit that was necessary to see a successful year last year. And so again, like most schools, there was a certain period of time in which we had to operate completely virtually. So in other words, delivery of instruction was provided virtually. And I think most people, regardless of how much background knowledge they have about instruction for children who are blind or visually impaired, can appreciate the challenge of a child receiving instruction virtually. But most weeks last year, we operated a hybrid program in which parents opted to have their child receive instruction virtually or face-to-face. And so our staffs worked to accommodate both virtual instruction and face-to-face instruction simultaneously amidst very expansive health and safety mitigation efforts, I think is really nothing short of remarkable. The dedication of our staff is certainly, as we've talked about before, another point of pride. Well, I think it might have been touched on in earlier comments, but I would just reinforce that the concept of community care is really core to our interests, and as a school to be viewed as a school that is a servant leader within a broader community. So, as an example, we're kicking off a capital campaign to improve safety, accessibility, and instructional spaces for a campus that is over, as we mentioned before, over 120 years old, and now educates primarily students who are not only visually impaired, but also have other physical and cognitive challenges, in which is a different student population than in 1900 when the school was originally constructed. So one part of the capital campaign is focused on renovating a house the school owns just beyond its walls and has generally been used for temporary housing for student interns, student teachers, and other guests of the school. So we thought a near adjacent adjustment, so to speak, of its use could better equip our students with the 21st century skills in the hospitality industry by opening a bed and breakfast and operating it as a student-run business enterprise. The capital campaign comes into play in the context of our renovation of the first floor to accommodate guests with such profound physical challenges that no other hotel or motel, even fully complying with the ADA, would be able to accommodate their needs. So this involves installing equipment to safely transfer an individual from a wheelchair to a bed, overhead tracking, so someone can be safely transferred from bed to the bathroom, and other assistive features. So parents of children with this level of need they're often confronted with the difficult choice of leaving them in the care of visiting nurses or extended family members while the rest of the family goes on vacation. But we foresee, with the operation of our bed and breakfast, operated by our own students, we believe there'll be at least one place where they'll be able to visit historic Philadelphia from wherever they might come from without having to leave one of their children behind. So, I guess my primary point is that most capital campaigns are about constructing buildings. But at its core, I think our capital campaign is about reconstructing what people think students who are blind or visually impaired can do specifically, but also building a more accessible and caring community generally. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share the good work of the Overbrook School for the Blind with the listeners of WPPM.
The audio of enthusiastic students featured earlier comes from the Welcome to Overbrook School for the Blind video from the school's YouTube page. Thanks so much to the Overbrook School for the Blind for its inspiring work with children and young people living with blindness and visual impairment here in Philadelphia and around the world. More information about Overbrook School for the Blind can be found on their website at www.obs.org. That's www.obs.org. Manna got its start providing nutritious meals to Philadelphia neighbors dying of AIDS in 1990. By the early 2000s, the organization had expanded its reach to provide life-giving nutrition to people with a range of chronic illnesses, delivering food to tens of thousands of Philadelphians.
I lost about 10, 12 pounds inside of like a month, and then Manna stepped in.
One thing that's really important when you're dealing with cancer, you have to keep a certain weight. If it wasn't for Manna Meals, I wouldn't be here.
Sue Dougherty, CEO of Manna, joined us to share insights on Manna and its work.
So we say that Manna is revolutionizing healthcare with nutrition interventions, harnessing the power of food as medicine. And truly what that really means is that for over 30 years, we really are taking care of our neighbors that are sick and vulnerable and battling serious illnesses. And we're making sure that they get the proper nutrition to win the fight for their life. So my background is I'm a registered dietitian and I've been with Manna since 1999. So I truly do believe that having the background of nutrition, working directly for many, many years with patients and seeing their struggle where diets are so often prescribed by healthcare providers, but there's not a lot of thought about how folks can access those special prescribed diets. And so I really do think that, I pinch myself all the time that I get to come work at this incredible organization that truly is leading the way nationally to make sure that folks really do get that food as medicine and really to look at Manna as more of treatment. I think often we're confused or people maybe see us more in that food space or food insecurity. And the reality is that, unfortunately, over 95% of the clients we serve are food insecure, but they also have very serious health issues where they really do need those specialized diets. So often, right, in our lives, we hear the term, oh, you need to eat better. Or, I think a lot of people understand that folks that have diabetes maybe need to follow special dietary practices. But that is true for many, many illnesses. And so the example I use often are folks that maybe have some issues with kidney disease. And often they're prescribed diets that are very complicated. They are told that they have to follow a 2-gram sodium, 4-gram potassium, 4-gram phosphorus, fluid restricted diet. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm a registered dietitian with an thankfully amazing support system and have financial resources. And that would be really, really, really complicated for me to follow. So when you look at the population that Manna is serving, that not only are they struggling with food insecurity, but they're struggling with often multiple illnesses, right? So maybe they have diabetes and they have congestive heart failure. So they need really specialized diets. And so the way that Manna tackles that is that we have 11 different diet modifications. We have a team of registered dietitians that really focus on the science, right? So making sure that we're designing those diets to specifically match the right nutrition with the different illnesses that our clients are battling. And then we have a team of amazing chefs, right, who like to remind us often that, okay, the science is very important, but if it doesn't taste good, clients won't eat the meals. So they really work very closely with our dietitians to design a menu that not only is nourishing, but also tastes amazing.
We asked Ms. Dougherty about points of pride and unique details of Manna's work. Here's what she told us about Manna, its process, and even the role of research there.
I think there's a few that really stand out. I think, when Manna was founded during the HIV/AIDS crisis, we were a supplemental meal program. So we provided, maybe 10 meals a week to folks. And really, as we got more and more into the space of science, right, we kind of shifted as medications became available for folks with HIV and AIDS and folks were living, but not living without consequence. We shifted our focus from really early on, we were comfort care and helping people to die to shifting our focus to helping people live, which meant the science and the nutrition. And during that time also, we made the commitment, which I think has been huge in our growth, in that we do believe in food as medicine, and we moved to a complete meal program. So all of our clients get 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. If they have children in the household, we also make sure that the children receive meals as well. And maybe they may be the caregiver for an elderly parent. We will provide meals for those individuals as well. So, we learned a long time ago, you can't show up and serve a mom who maybe is battling cancer, who has 3 children that she's taking care of, and she's not going to want to help take care of the kids as well. But really, that complete meal program, that commitment to 21 meals a week, I think was a huge undertaking for the organization, but really did show our commitment to that belief is food is medicine, right? When you go to the pharmacy to pick up your high blood pressure medication, they don't give you pills for 5 days and tell you to figure that out on a weekend. And then I think another strong commitment is really Manna's commitment to data and research. We launched the Manna Institute a few years ago that really is a research and evaluation arm here at Manna that is really committed to making sure that what we're doing and how we're serving our clients, that we're doing that correctly and we're getting that data out. Unfortunately, there's just not enough research or focus on the importance of food as medicine. And so, our ultimate goal is that someday that everyone who gets prescribed a medically tailored meal will have access to that. And the only way that that's going to happen is through data and policy change. So I think our commitment to getting that out into the universe speaks volumes to the mission. I think one thing that the listeners may be surprised to find out about Manna is how we do take care of the household, right? That all of the children in the household receive meals, and that we're also really scientifically tailored and evidence-based. I think, there's a lot of support now we had research that was published in 2013, which was the first of its kind nationally that really showed the impact of our model, of a medically tailored meal model, and education provided by registered dietitians that showed that our clients saw an average reduction of 31% reduction in medical costs per month after being on Manna's meal program, and also reported improved health outcomes like improvement in hemoglobin A1C. When our clients are discharged from the hospital, they're most likely to be discharged home versus to a subacute center. So I think a lot of folks would be surprised to see how much data and how much support our program has on the impact of health outcomes and healthcare costs.
We wanted to know how Manna responded to the circumstances of COVID-19 reality for Manna and its commitment to its mission and community care. Ms. Doherty had this to share.
So as for many, right, March 13th, 2020 changed Manna. I think it probably changed us forever with the impact of the COVID pandemic. I mean, literally overnight, we lost 70% of our volunteer workforce, which for us, we are a volunteer-driven organization. So before COVID, we would have, we're a small staff. We're a staff of, 50 employees, but we would have every single day in our kitchen, 150 volunteers in the kitchen helping us to prepare and package our meals that are going out for our clients. And we lost 70% of that volunteer workforce overnight. And so, but we also, at the same time, literally immediately started seeing an increase in demand for our services, which makes sense, right? Our clients are the sickest of the sick and truly are the population that a trip to the supermarket could be a death sentence for them. So we knew we had no option, right? there was not even a thought that we were going to close our doors or that we were going to work from home. We knew we are a production facility. We certainly, kind of held on to our roots coming out of the HIV/AIDS epidemic and just went into full action on how we would make sure that we would continue to meet the needs of our clients. So I would say immediately what we did was all of our clients have a week's worth of meals at one time delivered. So we were concerned that, God forbid, there had been a COVID outbreak traced to Manna, our facility. At that time, facilities were being forced to close for, a week or so. So we wanted to make sure our clients, if that happened, our clients were taken care of. So our director of operations immediately sourced shelf-stable product, and the staff came in. I felt like we worked for like 72 hours nonstop and and packaged a week worth of shelf-stable product and made special deliveries that weekend so that all of our clients at all times would have 2 weeks worth of food and not go without proper nutrition in the event that we were forced to close. Thank God that did not happen. We actually have not lost one day of operation here in the facility. The staff and the volunteers have just been incredible. The individual volunteers, right? Most of the loss came from our corporate groups that came in to volunteer because obviously most companies went to a work from home and so they stopped volunteering. But I have to tell you, I came to work that first couple months every day thinking, is today the day that no one's going to show up? And our volunteers did. I mean, we had much less volunteers and our staff, including myself, for the first couple months I was in the kitchen because nothing is more important than getting the meals to the clients. So we've continued to see a growth in referrals. We're serving more meals than ever. Our volunteer workforce is starting, to come back and resume. But we literally, most of us, right, we were hour to hour, adjusting and figuring out, how are we going to run a production kitchen socially distanced, right? But the operations team figured it out. We ordered a whole bunch of 6-foot-long stainless steel tables that worked as kind of separators for social distance and continued. And we're all just so thankful that we've been able to continue and not implement a wait list and not have any disruption to service for our clients. So I think now more than ever, community care here at Manna is embodied in so many ways. As the CEO of an organization, right, I never imagined in a million years that I would be leading an organization during a pandemic. But making that decision day one that we were not going to separate the administrative staff or the operations staff, right? There was no way I was going to say, okay, you all need to come to work and we're all going to be sitting at home working from the office, we're working from our homes. And making that call, I 1000% felt it was the right call, but there was also that, I remember walking home from work thinking if someone got sick, because I made them come to work, right? Would I be able to live with that? And so, but what we have talked about so much, even just from a staffing level, right? That truly, and I speak for myself, but also I know from what I hear from our staff, we all feel so grateful that we had Manna to come to. Because although it was very, very scary, right? But we all kind of, when we walk into this door, it's weird, and it still, I think, carries true today, where there's so much going on in our city and nationally. And, I think none of us are going to come out of what's happened the past 2 years the same. But there's something that is the same about Manna. People talk about, you go to the grocery store and people are more angry or people are more depressed. And there's something about when you walk into the doors here at Manna that it feels the same. People are so happy and the volunteers are so happy to be here. The staff truly, I believe, feel grateful that we've had Manna to come to. And we've all kind of taken care of each other internally, right? As people, as staff, as volunteers, but we also feel such a tremendous responsibility to taking care of our clients, right? And that's what we hear from the volunteers, from the staff, that this is the place that you walk in, everyone has a common denominator, right? And I think what's grown over the past 2 years is that we've always had that feeling of taking care of our clients. I think what we feel more now than ever is we feel a responsibility of taking care of ourselves and each other. Truly, I think the definition of community care, right, is you're taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of others. And that is folded into so many levels here at Manna.
The earlier audio featuring Manna clients is from the Manna mission video, available to view in its entirety on Manna's website via the mission page. Thanks so much to Manna for nourishing our neighbors living with chronic illness throughout the city of Philadelphia and advocating for accessible nutritional therapy for all who need it. More information about Manna can be found at www.mannapa.org. Again, that's www.mannapa.org. You're listening to a celebration of organizational community care impacting lives in the Philadelphia region. I'm your host, Tara Lake, here on WPPM 106.5 FM. We head now to the city of Wilmington to visit the Choir School of Delaware. Like Overbrook School for the Blind, the Choir School of Delaware got its start back in the 1800s and continues its unwavering commitment to students and music education today. That beautiful audio captures the voices of the Choir School of Delaware, singing under the direction of Arian Harley Emerson, Director of Music and Operations for the Choir School of Delaware. Arian Harley Emerson filled us in on the Choir School of Delaware's work. Mr. Harley Emerson helped us to understand the history of the Choir School of Delaware and told us about its mission.
The choir school was founded in 1883, so the institution of the choir has been around for a little bit, a little over 138 years at this point. But our after-school program didn't get started until 1996. And so in 1996, that's when the latest I would say evolution of the choir school began. And that includes the after school program, summer program, programming, as well as a lot of work in the community. My role here at the choir school is that of the executive director. Though my title is Director of Music and Operations, that just really gives a sense of really letting folks know that I'm doing both music and administrative work for the organization. But I serve in the capacity of the executive director, so I manage our team here. I'm a guardian of the vision. I work with our board of director to accomplish our goals. I work with our legislators and our elected officials in our communities and with a variety of partners who help us deliver critical social services to our families.
Arian Harley Emerson also opened up about points of pride and unexpected aspects of the Choir School of Delaware, with a focus that's even bigger than beautiful music.
Yes, I have a number of points of pride. I think that one of them is that we maintain a 100% high school graduation rate. And that might not seem like a big deal, but we do know that having that high school diploma transforms lives, it transforms the trajectory of bloodlines, and provides much more opportunities, particularly to Black and Brown communities where there has been systemic disinvestment for a long time. I also am extremely proud of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We really work hard to honor the community that we serve here at the choir school. We work hard to have a diverse team. We work hard to work with diverse vendors. So it is more than just, a hollow equity statement that might sit on a website or on a piece of paper, but we live those principles and demonstrate them through our work that we do every day and how we interact with our community. Many people are surprised to hear that the Choir School of Delaware does so much more than choir. While choir is at the center of what we do and music is this common language that we speak, it's just the hook to bring people in, to help us have a commonality to help us bridge divides. But the real work that we do is in community building and really removing barriers to success for our community. So I think that is something that is surprising to people. I think another thing that most people don't know about the choir school is that we are an intergenerational choir. So what is that? What does that mean? That means that we have students who are ages 7 through 18, and they're also singing alongside with adult mentors. These mentors mentor them in algebra and French and help them with reading and homework, and also engage with them musically as well. And they sing side by side with these adults. So it's a really different model that we have at the choir school with an intergenerational community from the time that anyone enters in our building to the time that they leave. We really believe that this intergenerational model, this model of mentorship over an extended period of time is extremely valuable and transformative. So I think most people would find that surprising that we engineer our community to be built in this way.
Like all of our profiled organizations, the Choir School of Delaware navigated new challenges in its commitment to serving and caring for the community. Mr. Harley Emerson told us about how the school responded.
During the pandemic, there were certainly many needs within the community. Being that we serve a majority minority community, meaning that we are serving mostly Black and Brown students and families, we were dealing with a lot of critical and basic needs that we needed to find a way to address. So that began with things as simple as food. How we're going to get access to food, how we're going to get food into homes, because we do provide meals here at the choir school, dinner to our students every day. We were providing toilet paper because it couldn't be found anywhere. We were providing laptops and tablets to students. We were providing internet access because, some students received laptops through us or through their schools, but they just didn't have broadband internet that was sufficient for all of the Zoom education that we would be receiving or online virtual education that they would be engaging in. So those are some of the ways that we were able to intervene and to be able to really support our community that was already facing systemic barriers to their success before the pandemic, but was certainly exacerbated by the pandemic. We were online with our kids every day. We actually added a day. We are normally open Monday through Thursday to students. We ended up adding a day because there were just so many needs, and we also wanted to be able to have some off-screen time for our students and their families as well. So it was really definitely a challenging time, but I felt like it was a rewarding time. We really had the opportunity to make house visits, to really understand the story of each family, because sometimes it can get so busy that you don't really understand each person's genesis story. So I do feel that that was one thing that brought us closer to one another during the pandemic, was being able to hear those stories while we were providing some additional services to families. But all in all, we made it through. We had a complete season. We finished out the season virtually in the spring of 2020 and launched an entire virtual season in the 2020-2021 school year. We were able to begin transitioning back to some outdoor performances, which was really great. We started adding streaming to our concerts, providing more access to those who have traditionally lacked access to the arts. And then this summer, we were able to come back 100% in person, and we were able to actually mount a full musical, even though there was this pandemic happening. It didn't look the same. There were folks wearing masks and things like that, but to be able to provide that point of connection, just the kids were just so emotional at the end of the run of that show, because it had been over a year since they had had the opportunity to hear other people singing with them. They had waited over a year to have an experience that had this social element to it. They had waited over a year to be outside of the house, you know? And so it was really an incredible opportunity. And though we were in service of others, the pleasure was truly ours. It was our pleasure to be able, and our really great privilege to be able to have this front row seat to see this dynamic and transformational change in the lives of our students and their families. Choir School embodies the value, I would call it a value, of community care by working with the community rather than working for the community. And I think that there's a big distinction to be made. There are a lot of people who want to help and want to do things for people. But when we do things for people, it is an unsustainable model, and we never actually transfer power and education and knowledge and wealth and prosperity and opportunity and access if we are doing it for rather than with. And so community care, how we show that we care, is that it might take longer for us to achieve some of our goals if we do it with the community rather than for the community, but it's a much more sustainable model. So let me give you an example. The choir school advocates for a variety of issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. For instance, we advocated in the state of Delaware to also have Black history as part of the K-12 curriculum. Though we could just go into our elected officials and say, you should do this, and do this on behalf of the community, which is fine and great. But to engage the community to say, hey, we want you to come with us, and we want to have this conversation about why this is important to you. And we put their voices before our own. That's when we are really showing and demonstrating, embodying and living that value of community care. And so that is something that we have always been aware of, but I definitely think during this time of twin crises of the pandemic and racial justice and our kind of great reawakening, it has really put that at the center of our work once more, and in a way that's different and certainly more intentional. We even think about the repertoire that we're singing and how is that reflective and representative of the students and families that we serve. Because, you know, the choral arts, just like all arts, are definitely more Eurocentric. And so we've been saying, okay, how do we do this choir thing with our community? So we had lots of conversations about discovery about what do you like to sing, what is important, what kind of messages. We are also expanding that out to what other Black and Brown artists can we include and represent in our concerts. So that includes poetry and prose by other Black and Brown folks within our community. That includes other scholarship that can be presented to provide a social and historical context to the pieces that we are doing. And those are all things we're doing with the community, with their help rather than for the community. And I think that is how we embody and express community care as one of our core values.
The audio featured in this segment is from Total Praise, titled for the song, published on the Choir School of Delaware's YouTube page in May of 2018. We're grateful to the Choir School of Delaware for its service to Wilmington communities through music, performance, and education. The school provides information and concert dates at its website, located at www.choirschoolofdelaware.org. That's www.choirschoolofdelaware.org. As we continue our special look at organizational commitment to community care, we turn to Covenant House, Pennsylvania, which has been intervening in the lives of teens and youth experiencing housing insecurity, homelessness, and trafficking in Greater Philadelphia and Central Pennsylvania for 2 decades.
A week before Christmas, 2015, I checked into the shelter. I was in an abandoned house, and I got a call from Mr. Marshall, and he was like, do you want to come Like we have a bed available. And then I decided to take the chance to come to the Covenant House. And then after then, it like completely changed my life.
Covenant House has really helped me become sort of the person that I want to be. I got jobs that I think didn't even know existed, that I didn't even know I would be interested in. And I really appreciate the Covenant House for opening that door and giving me that opportunity.
We spoke with Jen Weichert, Executive Director of Covenant House, Pennsylvania, to learn more about this organization's work. Ms. Weichert gave us a sense of the history of Covenant House, Pennsylvania, and provided us with a picture of the mission of the organization.
Covenant House, Pennsylvania has been in operation for just over 20 years. Currently, we have 3 physical locations in the state, 2 in Philadelphia and 1 in York City in central Pennsylvania. And our history is from starting with outreach services, where we had staff members canvassing the streets for homeless individuals, all the way today to doing transitional housing and some other housing first approaches with youth. And by housing first, I mean focused on making sure that we can get young families and young adults into housing as soon as possible, because we think that will have the greatest impact in their long-term success. Covenant House, Pennsylvania has a service population of young adults who are ages 16 to 22. And with that often will come little people, newborns, babies, toddlers of mothers that we are serving in our program. So we have young adults and then we have young families. Many of the young people that we serve have been in foster care. Some have been incarcerated. Some are fleeing domestic violence and other violence situations. So they are in trauma, in crisis. Many are vulnerable. And certainly of COVID-19, we've seen their vulnerability go up in terms of the support that they need. Data says that over the course of young adulthood, the average will be 1 in 9 young people will experience some form of homelessness. So that means that it's impacting in our neighborhoods, in our communities where we live and work. And so this isn't a problem that we can turn away from. So that's why I love to do these sorts of programs to help educate the community about how real this is and how pervasive it is. So I think about myself as a cheerleader for the mission, and that is to provide shelter and supportive services to the young people who are coming to Covenant House. I think about myself as an advocate for those young people. I think about myself as an ambassador, for the Covenant House mission. I'm a team leader. We have over 60 employees across the state of Pennsylvania. I'm a fundraiser because we are a nonprofit, and all the services that we deliver, we do so at no cost to young people. So I wear a lot of hats at Covenant House, and I'm always trying to move the organization forward in a strategic way to make sure that we can serve as many young people as possible with the best quality of services.
We've been learning about organizational points of pride today, and Jen Weichert shared those highlights with us as she provided facts that we may not know about the expansive work of Covenant House, Pennsylvania.
I am incredibly proud of Covenant House's service during COVID-19. So as your listeners know, many of us had to stay home for months at a time because of the pandemic. And for Covenant House, that meant that our facilities had to turn into places where people could shelter in place, where they could quarantine if they were symptomatic, or they could live if they had COVID, and we could help them to work through their own trajectory with the pandemic. So in the course of those very acute months of a lot of COVID cases, and even up until today, our doors have remained open 24/7. We've not closed one day. And I think that's extraordinary because it really is the embodiment of our mission. We want to be able to serve youth as quickly as possible and have as few, barriers to entry And I think that is a really strong point of pride for me, that our doors never closed. Covenant House, when I joined the organization in January of 2020, so right before the pandemic. And when I joined, I thought this organization provides shelter. We're an emergency shelter, and we do some other services. But what has surprised me is the amount of supportive services that we offer. Everything from helping young people to understand what it means to go on a job interview and how you have to prepare and how you have to comport yourself and how you have to follow up, right? All the things that many of us as adults know, but young people may not have been mentored to know. I've also been surprised by the parenting support that we give young people. As I said earlier in the interview, the mental health care. So not just this shelter where we're providing a bed and a hot meal, but this kind of supportive service approach where we're really trying to wrap around a youth during their time at Covenant House and say to them, what are your dreams? And how can all of the things that Covenant House has and all the partnerships that we're a part of, how can we unleash those in order to give you opportunities that you're looking for? It doesn't mean that that journey is always a linear one, right? But it can be a really positive adventure for a young person who's motivated and wants to figure out what their next steps are on their way to being permanently housed. So I meet young people every day who are in the midst of that journey, and they're learning about themselves and they're finding their strengths. And I think that is an incredibly inspiring thing to witness.
We asked Ms. Weichert to tell us more about how Covenant House Pennsylvania responded to the conditions of the COVID-19 shutdown and maintained its commitment to community care. And she outlined the organization's response.
COVID-19 dramatically impacted Covenant House. In some ways, I think we were able to see some innovation at play. And what I mean by that is our doors stayed open 24 hours a day. We didn't stop delivering services. And in the course of that, we sometimes had to do things differently. So we moved to a lot of virtual service delivery. As we all were engaged in virtual activities. That was not typically how Covenant House had conducted its affairs, be it fundraising or service to clients. We had to pivot very quickly, and I'm proud that we were able to do that. I think also we had to spend more time really thinking about the intersectionality for youth between things like health and employment, between things like health and mental health and employment. And by what I mean is intersectionality is many of our youth were coming to us because they lost jobs, and it propelled them very quickly into being housing insecure. And maybe that happened because they also had COVID or because their job went away because of COVID. So all of these things were all sort of tied up. So again, with upsides, we saw our ability to have youth very quickly pivot career-wise and move into jobs that were deemed essential, that several months ago during the height of the pandemic were, virtually being created overnight by the dozens. So youth were able to take advantage of some of the opportunities, I think, that the pandemic unleashed. At the same time, we saw Covenant House's young people and our staff, quite honestly, really struggling with mental health. And that remains a challenge to this day. For me, I believe that the pandemic opened up sort of a chasm for many people around their mental health. It may have created new mental health. It may have, spurred past mental health. But many of our young people are really worried about the future. The future seems bleak, or they're concerned about contracting COVID or how they're going to be able to get a job and retain a job. And so for Covenant House, that was a new challenge that we really had to work through. And so we've added some additional services, we've added some additional partnerships, and we've really focused on trying to get our youth connected to outside mental health care so that when they no longer need Covenant House, they still are plugged into a community of healthcare and mental health care providers that can keep them healthy as they move through adulthood. At Covenant House, we are a community, and caring is the business of what we do. So as a community, we are always looking out for young people who might be vulnerable due to homelessness. And we're trying, as I said, to bring them into our community, give them these wraparound supports, and help them flourish when they leave. And I think that really is to use the expression, it takes a village, that's a village endeavor, right? We have all of our staff members, we have a board of directors, we have corporations and individuals in the community who support us. We have partnerships, city, local, you name it. We're embedded into these ecosystems because we want our youth who are served by us to trust us, and we want our community partners and donors to trust us. So we are about caring, and I think youth feel that when they enter our facilities, when they meet an outreach worker who might encounter them on the street. And that sort of ethos of care is everything that we do. Thank you, listeners.
Audio featured in this segment's clip came from the videos Rashawn's Story and Meet Anne, both featured on the Covenant House PA YouTube channel. Thanks so much to Covenant House, Pennsylvania, for its commitment to teens and youth who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. Covenant House, Pennsylvania keeps us updated on the website www.covenanthousep.org. Once more, that's www.covenanthousep.org. Thanks again for joining me for a celebration of organizational community care impacting lives in the Philadelphia region. I'd like to say a special thank you to our guests, Todd Reeves of Overbrook School for the Blind, Sue Doherty of Manna, Arian Harley Emerson of the Choir School of Delaware, and Jen Weichert of the Covenant House of Pennsylvania. If you missed any of the organizational websites mentioned earlier, you'll find a list at my website, www.taralake.com. That's www.taralake.com. I'm your host, producer, and editor, Tara Lake. Thank you so much for listening here on WPPM Philadelphia 106.5 FM.